I should have known something was off when Chloe smiled at me. Not her usual playful grin or the soft curl of her lips that used to melt me. No, this smile was sharp, dismissive, a smirk with no warmth behind it. It was a Wednesday evening, nothing special, and we were seated across from each other at our usual Italian place. The kind of restaurant where you don't need the menu anymore. 2 years of Wednesday dinners, and I still ordered the same chicken marsala. She used to tease me for that. That night, she didn't tease. She didn't flirt. She stirred her wine slowly, her eyes scanning the room like she was already halfway out the door. "You know what I've realized?" she said, her voice light, too light. I paused with a forkful of pasta halfway to my mouth. She didn't wait for my answer. "I'm just not feeling it anymore." The sentence landed like a punch to the chest. My fork clinked against the plate, forgotten. "Not feeling what?" I asked, already knowing the answer but needing to hear it from her lips. "This," she said, waving her hand vaguely between us. "You. Us. It's not it." I stared at her, dumbfounded. "What do you mean, not it?" She tilted her head, studying me the way you'd examine a pair of shoes that no longer fit. "I mean, I don't see a future here. You're not the spark. Not the person I imagined waking up to 5 years from now. You're comfortable, predictable, but not it." I blinked, trying to process the words as they echoed in my skull. Not it. Like I was a mismatched shirt she'd been meaning to toss for weeks. "But we've been," I started, then stopped. What was I even trying to say? That 2 years of memories, sex, Sunday mornings in bed, and late-night confessions should count for something? She shrugged, as if reading my thoughts. "It was nice for a while. But I've changed. You haven't. And I don't want to settle just because it's convenient." She sipped her wine, her eyes cool and unreadable. "I see," I said, my voice flat. "So what? You came to dinner to dump me over ravioli?" Another shrug. I figured it'd be better than texting. Somewhere behind us, someone laughed too loudly. Silverware clinked against plates. My world was quietly imploding while the rest of the restaurant carried on like nothing was happening. "You don't even seem upset," I said. Her smirk deepened. "I'm just being honest. Isn't that what you always say you want?" Honest. Like a blade to the ribs. I didn't make a scene. I didn't cry or beg. I nodded, pulled out my wallet, dropped a few bills on the table, and walked out. My legs felt like they didn't belong to me. I don't even remember the drive home. Only that when I got there, her scent still lingered in the hallway of our shared apartment. Coconut shampoo and vanilla lotion. Familiar. Intimate. Now just residue. I sat on the edge of our bed for a long time that night, staring at the place where her jewelry used to clutter the dresser. I thought about the way her body used to fit against mine, the way she used to pull me close in the middle of the night, still half asleep, whispering my name like it meant something. And now, I was just not it. I replayed her words on a loop for days. Not the spark. Not the future. Not my type anymore. As if love was some trend she'd grown out of. As if I were last season's style she couldn't be bothered to wear anymore. The hardest part wasn't the breakup itself. It was the way she made me feel disposable. Like I had failed a test I didn't know I was taking. I kept wondering if it was my job, my body, my sex. Was I boring? Was I not ambitious enough? Not dominant enough in bed? Was I too emotional? Not emotional enough? Every question led to a dozen more, each one slicing a little deeper. I tried distracting myself. Gym, work, late-night drives with music cranked to the max. But the silence always found its way in. Her laugh, her moans, her fucking smirk haunted me. 1 week later, I still hadn't taken her toothbrush out of the bathroom. Her robe still hung on the back of the door. I didn't touch anything. Part of me couldn't. The other part wanted her to see that I wasn't falling apart, that I was better off. But I wasn't. Not yet. And then, one night, out of nowhere, her sister Tessa texted me. "Tessa, hey, birthday dinner tomorrow night. Just a few of us. No hard feelings. Chloe won't be there. Promise." I stared at the message for what felt like hours. Why would Tessa even invite me? Why the hell did I want to say yes? Because maybe, just maybe, I needed a distraction. A reminder that I was still here. Still desirable. Still it, for someone. It started with a buzz. Just a low, polite ding on my phone while I was sitting on the couch, eating leftover takeout straight from the container and pretending that reheated noodles were enough to fill the hole Chloe left behind. My apartment still smelled like her lavender detergent. I hadn't done laundry since she left. I hadn't done much of anything, really. When I picked up my phone and saw Tessa's name, my first instinct was confusion. We weren't close, not even remotely. Tessa had always been Chloe's confident, brutally honest younger sister. She didn't exactly filter her thoughts, and she never pretended to like me more than she actually did. She was polite, sure, smiled at holidays, asked about work when Chloe dragged me to family brunches, but she never really engaged. She had this way of raising one eyebrow at me when Chloe told some half-true story or when I tried to be funny and landed flat. She always struck me as someone who saw through people, or just didn't bother to hide it when she didn't care. So, her name showing up on my screen was unexpected enough. The message even more so. Tessa, birthday dinner tomorrow night. Just a few friends. Don't worry, Chloe won't be there. No hard feelings. Thought you could use a drink. I stared at it, reread it 3 times. I should have said no. I meant to say no. But something in me, the part that still burned from Chloe's words, the part that wanted to prove I wasn't broken, typed before I could stop myself. Me, appreciate the invite. Sure, I'll swing by. She sent back a winking emoji. That was it. Just that. And maybe it was stupid, but it stayed with me the rest of the night. The next day, I must have changed clothes 6 times. It wasn't a date. I knew that. And yet, there was this tension in my gut that hadn't been there before. The kind you get when something unexpected is coming, and part of you wants it too. Tessa's text kept playing in my mind like a song I couldn't turn off. No hard feelings. No, Chloe. You could use a drink. Yeah, I could use a hell of a lot more than a drink. I got to the restaurant 10 minutes early, stood across the street watching the door like some indecisive asshole. It was a sleek little fusion place downtown, the kind with dark windows and hanging Edison bulbs you could see glowing from the sidewalk. The kind of place Chloe used to drag me to when she wanted to feel fancy. I half expected her to be inside anyway, somehow, laughing, radiant, perfectly composed like none of it mattered. But when I walked in and gave the name, the host just smiled and led me back. The group was small. 7 people total, not counting me. A few of Tessa's friends, some of whom I recognized vaguely from past gatherings, and one guy who looked like he was trying way too hard in a velvet jacket and chain necklace. Tessa sat at the head of the table, a glass of wine in one hand, wearing a fitted burgundy top that hugged her curves with almost theatrical precision. Her dark hair was curled loosely over her shoulders, and her lips were just slightly darker than usual, plum, maybe. Subtle, but deliberate. She stood when she saw me. You came, she said, like she was genuinely surprised and pleased. Not the fake kind of pleased, the kind that makes you feel seen. Didn't think I had much of a social life to protect these days, I replied, slipping into the seat next to her. She laughed. Well, I'm glad you did. I figured you could use a reminder that not all women are assholes. That got a raised eyebrow from the girl across the table, someone Tessa introduced as Cam. Tessa just grinned and toasted her wine toward me. Conversation flowed. The table was already a couple rounds in by the time I got there, and the vibe was light, easy. I didn't say much at first. Just drank my whiskey slowly, smiled where appropriate, nodded when someone brought up some local band I'd never heard of. But Tessa kept pulling me back in. Not in a forced way, more like a magnet. Her hand brushed my arm when she laughed. Her eyes found mine whenever someone made a joke at my expense. She'd toss me these little glances, half smiles that lingered just a second longer than they should. It was subtle. If I hadn't known her, or if I wasn't still carrying the weight of Chloe's rejection like a stone in my chest, I might have chalked it up to coincidence. But it wasn't coincidence when her fingers found my wrist for a moment after I made her laugh with a sarcastic remark. And it wasn't coincidence when she leaned in during a lull in conversation, so close that I could feel the warmth of her breath on my neck, and whispered, You look better than you did the last time I saw you. I turned, catching her gaze. Last time you saw me, I was getting dumped like a bad habit. She tilted her head. Exactly. I didn't know what the hell that meant. But it stirred something in me, something warm and dangerous. When dessert came, some flaming creme brulee thing I didn't touch, Tessa raised her glass again. To new beginnings, she said. And better endings. Eyes turned to her, then to me. A few people smirked, as if they were in on something. I just clinked her glass and took a long sip. As the night wound down, the others began to peel away. Ride shares, awkward hugs, promises to catch up soon, that no one meant. Eventually, it was just me and Tessa left at the table, the candles burning low. You're not what I expected, she said softly. How so? She shrugged. I thought you'd be bitter. Cold. But you're still warm. I've had a week, I said. Ask me tomorrow. She leaned forward, elbows on the table. Well, tomorrow, I might still be thinking about tonight. I swallowed hard. Her voice was silk, confident, but soft. Dangerous. I tried to play it cool. You always flirt this much at your birthday dinners. She smiled, slow and deliberate. Only when the guest of honor finally shows up. And just like that, I knew this wasn't just a distraction. It was the beginning of something far more complicated and far more tempting. I shouldn't have gone. That was the first thought that came to mind the next morning. But regret wasn't the right word for what I felt. Not exactly. It was something sharper, heavier. Like I'd stepped into a current stronger than I'd anticipated, and now the undertow was pulling me somewhere I hadn't meant to go. Because I couldn't stop thinking about her eyes. The way they locked on mine across that table, steady and slow. The way she leaned in and spoke in a tone that wrapped around me like silk sheets pulled tight. The way she touched my arm like she'd done it 100 times before. I kept replaying her last words. Only when the guest of honor finally shows up. I didn't know what she meant. Not really. But I couldn't stop thinking about how it made me feel. Like she saw something in me that Chloe never did. 2 nights later, she texted again. Tessa, just left the gym. Craving something greasy and terrible. You in? There was no overthinking this time. I was already reaching for my keys. We met at a 24-hour diner on the east side. Vinyl booths, sticky floors, fluorescent lights. The kind of place where the staff doesn't give a shit who you are or why you're there. Tessa was already seated when I walked in, sipping a milkshake like she was born in that booth. Her hair was still damp from the shower, tied up messily, a few loose strands clinging to her cheeks. She was wearing a gray hoodie that dipped just enough at the neck to show a sliver of black bra strap. Didn't peg you for a midnight diner type? I said as I slid into the booth across from her. She grinned. I'm not, but I figured you might be. Because I'm a tragic, heartbroken man in need of cholesterol? She dipped a fry in her milkshake and shrugged. Something like that. We talked for an hour. Nothing heavy. Just the kind of wandering, irreverent conversation that drifts effortlessly when 2 people are tuned into the same frequency. And yet, under it all, there was something else. A current. Every time she leaned forward, her neckline dipped just enough to make me look. Every time she laughed, her eyes lingered. And when she licked a stray drop of milkshake from her bottom lip, it wasn't innocent. And she knew it. Chloe never deserved you, she said, out of nowhere. Her voice softer than it had been all night. I looked up, caught off guard. You don't have to say that. I'm not saying it for you, she replied, holding my gaze. I'm saying it because it's true. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know what I could say. My brain was stalling, but my body wasn't. My eyes dropped to her lips. And hers, unmistakably, dropped to mine. Tessa. She never knew what she had. She whispered. And that was it. That was the moment the air changed. That was when I felt her foot slide across the floor and lightly press against mine under the table. Not accidental. Not a twitch. A slow, deliberate press of skin to skin that sent a current straight up my leg. I felt like I was holding my breath. She took the last sip of her milkshake, then set it down with slow precision. Her eyes never left mine. You want to walk me to my car? She asked. It wasn't a question. We stepped out into the cool night air, the city unusually quiet for once. She didn't say a word. Neither did I. Our footsteps echoed in sync along the sidewalk. Her car was parked half a block down, under a flickering street lamp, the kind of light that made everything feel surreal. She stopped at the door, turned to face me. Thanks for coming. I wasn't going to say no. She smirked. I know. The wind picked up slightly, catching her hair. I reached up without thinking and tucked a strand behind her ear. My fingers brushed her skin, and something sparked. Her breath caught. I heard it, felt it, and then her eyes locked on mine again. That same look. Not just flirtation. Not playfulness. That look that says, I've imagined you. I've wanted you. You keep looking at me like that, I said, my voice low, and I'm going to do something we can't take back. Her head tilted. Her lips parted. Maybe that's exactly what I want. The tension snapped, taut, and undeniable. For a heartbeat, we just stood there, inches apart, breathing each other in. And then her hand slid into mine. Not innocently, not sweetly. She guided my hand to her waist, pulled me in, and before I could think better of it, I kissed her. Her mouth was soft but demanding. Open, warm, familiar in a way that confused me, and new in a way that thrilled me. She moaned, low and throaty, against my lips, and I felt her fingers tangle in the collar of my shirt, pulling me even closer. The kiss deepened. She pressed her body into mine, no space left between us. I could feel the curve of her hips, the rise and fall of her chest, the raw, unfiltered want that was coursing through both of us. When she finally pulled back, her eyes were wide, pupils dark and dilated. "We should stop," she whispered. But her hand didn't move from my chest. "Probably," I murmured. "We didn't." Her hand slid lower. Mine followed the curve of her waist, dipped to her lower back, fingers brushing skin where her hoodie had ridden up. The kiss that followed was messier, more urgent, and when she finally broke away again, breathless and flushed, she pressed her forehead to mine. "This is going to get complicated," she said. "I know. You still want it." I didn't even hesitate. "Yes." She smiled. This time, not a smirk. Something softer. Something real. 2 days passed. Long ones. The kind where everything I tried to do felt like a distraction that didn't quite stick. I couldn't focus on work. I couldn't even remember what I ate for dinner. All I could think about was that kiss, the way her breath caught, the way her body pressed into mine like she'd been waiting for it. There was no denying the chemistry between us now. No pretending that what happened outside the diner was some impulsive accident. We were past that. Way past. So when Tessa texted me on Friday night, I didn't hesitate. "Tessa, there's a lounge downtown. Rooftop. They have live music. You game?" "Me. Only if you're saving me a dance." Her reply came fast. "Tessa just won?" 20 minutes later, I was standing in front of a sleek glass building, the sound of distant music pulsing from above. The elevator ride to the rooftop was strangely quiet, that kind of prelude silence where you know the story's about to change. And it did. The moment I stepped out, the city lights exploded around me. The skyline stretched wide, glittering like stars spilled across a velvet sky. The lounge was draped in amber light, the air thick with jazz and bass and the soft hum of conversation. And then I saw her, Tessa, standing at the edge of the rooftop, her silhouette framed by the glow of the city behind her. She wore a black dress, tight, sleek, molded to her like a second skin. It clung in all the right places, dipping low at the back, with a slit that teased her thigh every time she shifted. She turned slowly, like she felt me watching. And God, did she smirk. "You made it," she said, walking toward me, each step like a challenge. "You didn't think I would? I was hoping you would." She looked me up and down, not shy about it. "Nice shirt." "You look—" I started but trailed off. There wasn't one word that did her justice. "I know," she said, eyes gleaming. "Come on, dance with me." She didn't wait for a reply. She just grabbed my hand and pulled me toward the center of the rooftop, where a small group swayed to the low throb of music. It wasn't a wild scene, not a sweaty club. This was something else. Something slower, sexier. The kind of music that begged for closeness. The kind that made hips move on instinct. She turned to face me, then stepped in, no hesitation. Her body pressed into mine, her arms looping around my neck. My hands found her waist like they belonged there. "You're tense," she whispered near my ear. Maybe I didn't expect this. This. She leaned closer, her mouth brushing my jaw. "Or me." "Both." She smiled against my skin. "Relax. You're doing fine." The music pulsed through us. Her hips began to move, slow and deliberate, drawing me into her rhythm. It wasn't a dance. It was something far more dangerous. Her thigh brushed between mine as she rolled her body closer, her breath hitching just slightly as I pulled her tighter against me. Her scent, soft vanilla and something warmer, filled my head. Every inch of her was touching me now, her chest against mine, her mouth near my ear, her hands playing with the back of my neck. Her nails dragged slowly up, teasing. She arched her body slightly and looked up at me, her lips parted, her eyes impossibly dark under the rooftop lights. "Still think Chloe was right?" she asked softly. "About what?" "That you're not it." I didn't answer. I couldn't. Her words hit like a fuse, lighting up every nerve in me. She leaned up on her toes, her lips brushing my jawline. "You're it to me," she whispered. And then she kissed me. Right there on the rooftop, with the skyline burning behind us and the music wrapping around our bodies. She kissed me like she meant it. Like she'd been waiting weeks, months, years for this moment. It wasn't careful. It wasn't polite. It was deep and hot and full of everything unspoken between us. When she pulled back, breathless, her hands still gripping the back of my neck, she didn't speak. Neither did I. The music faded into the background. Time bent around us. She tugged me closer again and moved her hips against mine, slower this time, teasing. The heat between us was unmistakable now, a tension that neither of us could hide. I should feel guilty, I murmured. For what? She's your sister. Tessa's smile curved like a blade. She didn't want you. Yeah, but you. I do. She leaned in again, her lips grazing mine. Let me want what I want. For a second, I just stared at her, at the boldness in her eyes, the way her body fit against mine like it was made for this. And then I let go. We danced. We kissed. We didn't talk much after that. Didn't need to. Every time our bodies brushed, every glance, every whisper in the space between our mouths, it all said what words couldn't. She wanted me. Not out of pity. Not to get back at her sister. She wanted me. When we finally left the lounge, the city had gone quiet. The cab ride was silent too, but the air between us was electric. Her fingers played along my thigh. My hand stayed on hers. We didn't say where we were going, didn't need to. She leaned in close and whispered, "Come inside." And I did. Because whatever this was, it was no longer just about Chloe. This was something new. Something dangerous. Something I wasn't ready to stop. The car ride to her place was mostly quiet, but the silence wasn't awkward. It was thick, electric, filled with anticipation. My pulse thudded in my neck, and her hand didn't leave my thigh the entire drive. Occasionally her fingers would shift, just enough to remind me she was there, to send a signal that her mind was running in the same direction as mine. We didn't talk because we didn't have to. Everything had already been said in the way she moved against me on the dance floor, in the way her lips parted just before mine met hers again, hungrier this time, in the way her tongue traced the seam of my mouth like a dare. When we reached her apartment, she didn't even look at me when she unlocked the door, just stepped inside, heels clicking against the hardwood, tossing her clutch onto the entryway table. She turned back, eyes catching mine with a heat that had only intensified since the rooftop. "Are you sure?" I asked, my voice low but certain. I needed to ask, even if my body was already past the point of no return. She nodded, stepping closer, her eyes locked on mine. I've never been more sure. The door clicked shut behind me. The moment it did, her hands were on my chest. Not gently, urgently. She pushed me back against the door and kissed me like she wanted to devour the last week of hesitation, the last ghost of Chloe. And maybe that's what it was, erasing her sister from my skin. Or maybe it had nothing to do with her at all. Maybe this was about us. Her dress was soft beneath my hands, silky and tight. I slid my palms down her sides, feeling her curve perfectly into my grip. She let out a soft gasp as I pressed her against the wall, our mouths crashing again, all pretense stripped away. She bit my lower lip as she pulled away, smirking. "Bedroom," she breathed. "Lead the way." But she didn't. Instead, she pulled me down onto the couch and straddled my lap, her dress riding high. The slit at her thigh exposed the soft, warm skin I'd only imagined touching until now. Her hands tugged at my shirt, pulling it over my head in one smooth motion. Her nails ran down my chest, slow and deliberate. "You have no idea," she whispered, "how long I've wanted to do this." Her confession hit me harder than I expected. I didn't want to think about how long. I didn't want to think about if it had started before Chloe ended things, if this was something simmering all along. Because the truth was, I wanted this now, more than I should have. When her lips found my neck, when her hips began to move, slow, grinding, purposeful, I let go. My hands slid up her thighs, pushing the dress higher, feeling the heat of her against me. "Is this wrong?" I murmured, gripping her hips tighter. "Maybe," she whispered into my ear, "but it feels fucking perfect." That was the last word either of us spoke for a while. We didn't rush. We explored. Her skin was soft, warm, addictive. Her hands were confident, fingers tracing old scars and forgotten muscles like she was memorizing them. When I slipped her dress off, she didn't cover herself. She let me look. She let me take my time. She wasn't shy. She wanted to be seen. And I saw her. All of her. Tessa made me forget everything else. All the pain, the confusion, the lingering shame. It disappeared in the way she gasped when my mouth found her collarbone, in the way her back arched when I ran my fingers down the inside of her thigh. The night unfolded slowly. We moved from the couch to the hallway to her bed, leaving a trail of clothes and tension in our wake. There was no hesitation anymore. No guilt. Just the shared rhythm of something that had clearly been building long before either of us admitted it. Afterwards, we lay tangled in her sheets, our bodies slick with sweat, her head on my chest, my fingers absently tracing circles on her bare shoulder. "Still thinking this was just about revenge?" she asked, voice quiet now, softer than I'd heard it before. I turned to look at her, brushing a damp strand of hair from her cheek. "No," I said. "Not anymore." She looked up at me, and something flickered in her expression. Not lust, not triumph. Something deeper, something careful, like she was tiptoeing toward something fragile. "I didn't plan this," she whispered. "I didn't invite you to dinner thinking this would happen." I nodded, letting the silence fill in the blanks between us. "But I'm glad you came," she said, her fingers moving along my chest. "You needed to be reminded. You're more than what she made you feel." Her words hit something I didn't know was still raw. I closed my eyes, letting the warmth of her body press into mine, letting her truth seep into the hollow spaces Chloe had left behind. "I don't want to be a mistake," I said quietly. "You're not. But this could be." Tessa propped herself up on one elbow, looking down at me. "It could," she agreed. "But I've spent enough of my life playing it safe. Maybe mistakes are where the good stuff lies." I didn't reply. I just watched her. This woman who shouldn't have been in my bed, who shouldn't have kissed me the way she did, who definitely shouldn't have made me feel like I was wanted again. And despite all the wrongness, I couldn't bring myself to regret a second of it. Eventually, we fell asleep tangled together, her breath steady against my skin, her leg thrown over mine like she wanted to keep me there. And I didn't move, because for the first time in weeks, I didn't feel disposable. I felt chosen. Sunlight poured through her bedroom window, soft and golden, warming the tangled sheets that barely covered our bodies. I woke first. For a long time, I just stared at the ceiling, trying to wrap my mind around where I was and who was next to me. Tessa. Tessa, whose breath was warm against my neck. Tessa, whose leg was still draped lazily over mine. Tessa, whose skin pressed into mine like we'd always slept that way, like she belonged there. Everything from the night before came rushing back in flashes. Her body arching under my hands, the way she whispered my name, the way her lips trembled just before she came. And I remembered how, afterward, she didn't pull away. She curled into me, head on my chest, arm wrapped around my ribs like a tether. And now, in the morning light, she still hadn't let go. I shifted slightly, trying not to wake her, but her fingers curled against my stomach. She murmured, still half asleep. "If you're sneaking out, I'll trip you before you reach the door." I smiled. Wasn't planning on it. She peeked one eye open, smirking. "Good." She rolled onto her back and stretched, slow, cat-like, the sheets sliding down her chest to reveal just enough to distract me all over again. "Stop looking at me like that," she said, grinning. "Like what?" "Like you're already thinking about round two." I shrugged. "If you insist." She laughed, that same throaty, easy laugh that first got under my skin. Then she sat up, her hair wild and gorgeous, and reached for the oversized shirt hanging from a nearby chair. She slipped it on, white, soft, swallowing her figure, and padded barefoot to the kitchen. I followed. Watching her move in her own space felt weirdly intimate. There was no awkwardness, no performance. She poured 2 mugs of coffee, handed me one, then leaned against the counter. "So," she said, sipping. "So." She arched a brow. "You freaked out yet?" "A little," I admitted. "But not in the way you'd think." She studied me. Meaning, it didn't feel wrong. She looked down at her coffee, then back at me. "Yeah, me neither." We stood in silence for a beat, the air heavy with the weight of what we'd done, what we were still doing. "I'm not trying to replace her," Tessa said suddenly. "I didn't ask you to." She looked up. "I know. I want you to understand something." I set my mug down, giving her my full attention. "I always thought Chloe was reckless with you," she said. "The way she treated you, the way she talked about you behind closed doors sometimes. I didn't like it. That stung more than I expected." "She talked about me?" Tessa nodded. "Not all the time. But she'd joke about how you were too steady. Too nice. Like stability was something to mock." I ran a hand through my hair, sighing. Guess I should have seen it coming. No, she said, stepping closer. She should have seen what she had. We were standing close again now. I could feel the heat radiating off her skin beneath the thin fabric of her shirt. She never saw what I did. Tessa whispered. How your eyes soften when you're listening. How you pay attention. How loyal you are, to a fault. My throat tightened. Why didn't you ever say anything? She shrugged. You were hers. And now? Her eyes met mine. Now I don't care whose name was on the past. I care about who shows up next. Something in my chest cracked open at that. It wasn't a declaration. It wasn't even a promise. It was raw honesty, something I hadn't felt in months. I reached out, fingers brushing her jaw. She leaned into the touch. I don't know what this is, I admitted. I'm not sure where it's going. Neither am I, she said softly. But I know I want to see where it could go. I kissed her again. Slow. Deep. Not fueled by lust this time, but by something gentler, more dangerous. Something that felt alarmingly close to hope. We spent the rest of the morning wrapped in each other. No rush. No pressure. Just quiet conversation and soft touches. She showed me the ridiculous plant she named Diego that she claimed had better emotional stability than most people she dated. I told her about my old guitar, buried in a closet for years. We made eggs, burned the toast, laughed like nothing outside that apartment mattered. And for a while, nothing did. But by early afternoon, reality began creeping back in. I needed to go. She had errands. We stood by her front door, the goodbye feeling heavier than it should have. I'll call you, I said. You better. She leaned up, pressed one more kiss to the corner of my mouth, then opened the door. I stepped into the hallway, took 3 steps, then stopped and turned. Tessa. She peeked around the doorframe. Yeah? I hesitated. Then, I don't regret last night. Her expression softened. Good. Neither do I. And with that, the door clicked shut behind me. But something told me this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. I should have known it wouldn't stay quiet for long. Tessa and I didn't exactly try to hide it, not after that night. We weren't shouting it from rooftops, but we weren't being careful either. Maybe we should have been. But when you're lost in something new, something electric, it's easy to forget the world is still watching. It started with a knock on my apartment door. Not a text, not a warning, just a sharp, aggressive knock that echoed in the silence of my Sunday morning. I opened the door half expecting a delivery. Instead, I found Chloe standing there, hair tied back in that effortless way she used to do when we were still us. No makeup, hoodie over leggings. But her eyes, those bright, unreadable hazel eyes, were hard. Calculating. Can I come in? She asked. I hesitated. You said we were done, remember? I didn't come to rehash anything, she said. I just need to ask you something. I stepped aside. She walked past me like she still lived there, like she still had a claim to the space. And maybe in some weird way, she thought she did. She didn't sit, just turned to face me in the middle of the living room and crossed her arms. Are you sleeping with my sister? The question didn't land the way she wanted it to. I didn't flinch. I didn't deny it. I just met her gaze and said, yeah, I am. Her mouth parted slightly. For a moment, I saw something flicker across her face. Not pain, not heartbreak, just disbelief. Ego, maybe. How long? She asked, voice cool. I crossed my arms. Does it matter? I want to know. I exhaled slowly. Since the night of Tessa's birthday. She blinked once, twice, then gave a bitter little laugh. Wow, she said. You really don't waste time, do you? I felt the heat rise in my chest. You ended things with a smirk and a shrug over ravioli, Chloe. What kind of grieving schedule were you expecting me to follow? She stepped forward, jaw clenched. She's my sister, and you're the one who decided I wasn't it for you. You don't get to dictate what I do now. Her arms dropped to her sides. You think this is about love or closure or whatever crap you've convinced yourself of? No, this is about you needing to prove you're desirable. I narrowed my eyes. And what exactly is it for you? Coming here unannounced, demanding answers from someone you walked out on? Her expression twisted. You're doing this to get back at me. I laughed, low and humorless. If I wanted revenge, Chloe, I would have paraded Tessa in front of you at every family function and kissed her in your old favorite dress. She flinched. Just barely. But I saw it. I took a step closer. But that's not what this is. Then what is it? She snapped. You're really trying to tell me you feel something for her? Yes, I said simply. I do. She stared at me. For once, she didn't have a comeback ready. I never thought you'd be the type to fuck someone out of spite, she said eventually. I never thought you'd be the type to throw away 2 years like they were nothing. The silence that followed was cold, tense. She looked around the apartment like she was seeing it for the first time. Her gaze landed on a wine glass near the sink, one that didn't belong to her. She noticed the jacket draped over the back of a chair. Tessa's. You let her stay here? Chloe asked, her voice quieter now. She wasn't exactly a one-night thing. Something hardened in her eyes. Does Mom know? Do you think I'm calling your mother for updates on my love life? She rolled her eyes, then moved toward the door. You know what's funny? She said, pausing with her hand on the knob. You were never it for me. But now that you're with her, suddenly, I get why she's always watched you. I didn't respond. I wouldn't give her the satisfaction. She opened the door, and there was Tessa, standing in the hallway, coffee cup in hand, hoodie draped over one shoulder, keys still dangling from her fingers. Tessa stopped. Her gaze snapped to Chloe. Chloe froze, lips parted. The tension was instant. I could feel it prickling across my skin like electricity before a storm. Seriously? Chloe said, voice low and dangerous. You're here? Right now? Tessa set the coffee down on the hall table and stepped in without waiting for an invitation. Her jaw was tight, eyes locked on her sister. You came to his apartment. I didn't follow you. You're unbelievable, Chloe hissed. Tessa crossed her arms. You dumped him, Chloe. Doesn't mean you screw him the second my back's turned. It's been weeks. That doesn't make it better. Tessa's voice dropped an octave. You didn't love him. You made that very clear. I didn't want him doesn't mean you were supposed to take him. I stepped between them then, feeling the tension rise like a tide I couldn't control. That's enough, I said. This isn't some competition. Chloe glared at me. You think this will end well? You think this won't explode in your face? I met her gaze. If it does, at least I'll know I followed something real. She looked like she wanted to say more, but she didn't. Instead, she turned on her heel and stormed out, slamming the door behind her. The silence that followed was deafening. Tessa leaned back against the wall and ran a hand through her hair. Well, she said. That went about as well as expected. I exhaled, walking over to her. You okay? She nodded. Yeah. Are you? I paused, thought about it, then nodded. Yeah. Because whatever chaos had just erupted, it didn't feel like the end. It felt like a beginning. Whispers have a way of moving faster than the truth. It started slow, a subtle shift in the way people looked at me when I walked into places I used to feel invisible in. The bar where I met friends. The yoga studio Tessa dragged me to once for laughs. Even the little coffee shop on 6th where I used to grab my morning espresso without so much as a glance. Now I got looks. Half curious, half judgmental. And I didn't even need to guess why. Chloe had told someone. Probably everyone. And her version of events, I'm sure, painted her as the tragic ex, blindsided by her conniving sister and the boyfriend who had, apparently, been lying in wait. The details didn't matter, not to them. They just needed a narrative, and I made for a very convenient villain. But Tessa? She didn't flinch. She didn't hide. If anything, she leaned in. The first time she kissed me in public, really kissed me. We were outside a little gastropub tucked away in the corner of downtown. She leaned in mid-conversation, cupped my jaw, and kissed me slow. Not performative, not rushed, just real. And people saw. We knew they saw. But her hand never left mine. I'm done pretending I don't want this, she said afterward, her fingers laced with mine as we walked down the block. I glanced at her, even if it means dealing with the fallout. She nodded, especially then. We tried to keep things low-key, but once the secret was out, it gained momentum like a runaway train. Her friends began texting her cryptic questions. Is it true? Are you really dating him? Does Chloe know? And then the bigger questions came. Why him? What are you doing? You're playing with fire. She didn't answer them. She didn't know them that. But I saw the toll it took. How she'd pause before opening messages. How she'd go quiet after phone calls with old friends. Not because she doubted us, but because she hated the noise it stirred. One night, we sat on her couch, legs tangled, half watching a movie neither of us cared about. Her phone buzzed again. She didn't pick it up. Want to talk about it? I asked. She shook her head. No. I just wish people would mind their own damn business. I kissed the side of her head. They will. Eventually. She looked up at me then, her eyes softer. They don't know you. They don't want to. Well, screw them, she said, sitting up straighter. I'm not going to apologize for wanting someone who actually gives a damn. We stayed like that for a while. Her curled into me, my hand resting on her thigh, the world pressing against the windows but unable to break in. The next day, we made a mistake. We went to a gallery opening. It wasn't supposed to be anything major. Her co-worker had a friend exhibiting. Tessa liked art. I liked the idea of seeing her in a dress again. Simple. Until Chloe showed up. We hadn't even made it to the second room when I felt her presence before I saw her. A tension, a weight. And then her voice, cool and clipped, rising behind us. Well, look who's not hiding anymore. Tessa stiffened beside me. I turned. Chloe stood there in a fitted green blazer, glass of white wine in one hand, staring at us like she was daring me to deny it. Did you follow us here? Tessa asked. Chloe laughed, sharp and short. Please. I was invited. Then enjoy the art and leave us alone, I said calmly. But Chloe didn't move. You know what the saddest part is? She said, her voice louder now, loud enough for people nearby to hear. It's not that you moved on. It's that you did it with someone so close, so fast. Like you couldn't wait to rub it in. We're not doing this here, Tessa said, jaw clenched. Why not? Chloe challenged. You've made it public, haven't you? Let's not pretend this wasn't calculated. Tessa took a step forward, and I could feel the fire building in her. You walked away from him. You mocked him. And now you're shocked he found someone who sees him for who he really is? Chloe's smile twisted. Funny. I always thought I was the selfish one. Turns out, you were just waiting for your chance. A silence fell. Tight. Cold. Tessa stepped back, her fingers slipping into mine. You don't get to rewrite what happened. You left. I didn't steal him. He was abandoned. I squeezed her hand. Let's go. We turned and walked away. People whispered. Eyes followed. But none of it mattered. Not in that moment. Outside, the air was sharp, and Tessa lit a cigarette with shaky hands, something I hadn't seen her do before. You okay? I asked. She took a long drag, then exhaled. Yeah, just angry. And tired. I'm sorry. She looked at me. For what? For pulling you into this mess. She stepped closer, her free hand cupping my face. You didn't pull me, she said. I jumped. And then she kissed me again. Right there on the sidewalk. In front of anyone who cared to look. Because maybe it wasn't a secret anymore. But it was real. Tessa didn't say it at first, but I could feel the shift. It was subtle, the way she hesitated before answering texts, the way she turned away just slightly when she got calls from her mother or old friends. She laughed less when we were out in public. Not because she wasn't happy. I knew she was. But because every smile now came with weight. With consequence. There's a cost to being unapologetically happy in the aftermath of someone else's mess. And she was starting to feel it. We were lying in my bed one night. A thunderstorm rolling quietly outside. The kind that made everything feel close, like the world had pulled in tight around us. Her head rested on my chest, fingers tracing the line of a scar near my ribs. I hate that I care what they think, she murmured. You're human, I said. She didn't respond, just kept tracing that line. I had a friend text me today, she added after a pause. Asked if I was still playing with fire. I felt my chest tighten. And what did you say? I told her fire's the only thing that makes me feel warm lately. I smiled at that, but she didn't return it. She meant you, she clarified. She thinks this is still about Chloe. That stung more than I expected. Do you think that? Tessa sat up, pulling the sheet with her, wrapping it around her chest like armor. I don't know, she admitted. Sometimes I wonder. I sat up too, the space between us suddenly miles wide. You think I'm using you? No, she said quickly. But maybe you're still haunted by her. And I'm just the light at the end of the tunnel. You think I'm walking toward you just to get away from her? She didn't answer. I stood, running a hand through my hair. The storm outside cracked, a flash of lightning lighting the room in a brief, surreal glow. I'm not still in love with Chloe, I said. I'm not doing this to make a point or win some invisible war. Tessa watched me from the bed, her eyes unreadable. But I'm not naive, I continued. I know this started messy. I know the timing sucked. But that doesn't mean what's grown between us isn't real. She looked down at the sheets, twisting them in her hands. It's not that I don't believe you. It's just, I've always been second to her. In everything. School. Friends. Boys. Even in our parents' eyes. And now you, the one man she actually cared about, you're with me. I'm not with you because of her, I said, crossing the room. I'm with you in spite of her. She looked up again. This time, there was pain behind her eyes. And fear. And I hated that I'd somehow let her feel like a rebound, when everything in me knew she was the first thing that had felt real in months. Then, the worst part happened. My phone buzzed. And I shouldn't have looked. But I did. It was Chloe. Chloe, I've been thinking. Maybe I was wrong. That was it. No context. Just enough to send a chill down my spine. Tessa saw the name. I didn't hide it. I didn't have time to. Her face hardened. You still talk to her? I don't, I said. That's the first message I've gotten since she showed up here. She stared at me. Are you going to respond? No. But the damage was done. She climbed out of bed, pulling on her clothes without speaking. Tessa, I just need some air, she said, voice tight. I moved toward her. Don't do this. I'm not doing anything. I need to be alone. She left without another word. And I stood there, heart hammering, the taste of guilt thick in my mouth, even though I hadn't done anything wrong. I didn't sleep that night. The silence of the apartment was suffocating. Chloe's text remained unanswered, but it stared at me like a ghost. A test. A crack in the foundation. In the morning, I went to her place. She opened the door in sweats, hair a mess, face raw. Hey, I said. She didn't speak. I stepped in. I'm not going to pretend I have it all figured out, but I know what I don't want, and that's to go a single day without seeing you again. Her arms crossed. You didn't delete her number. I didn't think I had to. She left you. Then she shows up, throws a grenade, and now she's texting you about maybe being wrong? You don't think that's calculated? Of course it is. Then why are you still caught in her orbit? I walked up to her, gently placing my hands on her waist. I'm not caught, Tessa. I'm anchored here. With you. She looked away. Then prove it. I will. But I need you to trust me. She hesitated, then nodded. But it wasn't full forgiveness. Not yet. There was a new tension between us now. Not passion, not lust. Just questions. Doubts. Ghosts that weren't ready to stay dead. The next night, I didn't sleep. Tessa hadn't answered my texts since I left her apartment, and the silence between us started to stretch into something that felt dangerously close to final. I paced my apartment like the walls were closing in. My phone burned in my pocket with the weight of a single message I hadn't opened. Chloe had followed up. Chloe, can we talk? I didn't respond. Not because I didn't want to know what she'd say, but because part of me already did. She was second-guessing, backpedaling. Maybe she was lonely. Maybe jealous. Maybe just afraid of being the one left behind. But none of that mattered anymore. What mattered was the look on Tessa's face when she saw Chloe's name on my screen. What mattered was how I felt the moment she closed the door between us. So I got in my car. It was almost 11 p.m. The city was quiet, humming like it was holding its breath. I drove with the windows down, the wind rushing past like I was racing time itself. I didn't text. I didn't call. I just showed up. When I knocked, there was a long pause. Then the sound of locks unlatching. Tessa opened the door, wearing an oversized sweater and the guarded look of someone who hadn't slept either. I didn't expect you, she said softly. I know. She leaned against the doorframe, arms folded. It's late. I couldn't wait. She held my gaze for a long beat. So what are you doing here? I swallowed. I'm choosing you. Her eyes flickered, but she didn't speak. I stepped closer. I've been thinking about that night at the diner. The way you kissed me. The way it felt like everything finally made sense. Took you long enough to remember, she muttered. I nodded. You're right. But this isn't some late realization. This isn't about Chloe. This is about you. About what we've been building. She leaned back, crossing her arms tighter. Then why did you keep her number? Why not shut that door the second she walked out? Because a part of me still thought closure meant conversation. I admit it. But it doesn't. Closure is silence. Closure is not answering. And I didn't answer, Tessa. Her eyes welled, just barely. She blinked it back, fast. So why are you really here? I'm here to burn the bridge. I pulled out my phone, opened the thread from Chloe, and without looking twice, hit delete. Then blocked her number. I turned the screen toward her, letting her see it disappear. I'm not interested in the past, I said. Only in building something real. With you. Her defenses cracked. She stepped back and opened the door wider. I walked in slowly, cautiously, like stepping back into sacred ground I'd once damaged. She closed the door behind me, then stood there in the quiet, watching me. Why me? She finally asked, voice barely above a whisper. I took a step forward, then another, until I was right in front of her. I placed my hands on either side of her face, fingers threading into her hair. "Because you see me," I said. "Because when I was crumbling, you didn't flinch. You leaned in. You made me feel chosen. Not tolerated. Not settled for. Wanted." Her lips parted, and I kissed her, slow, full of all the words I didn't know how to say. She melted into it. When we pulled apart, her forehead rested against mine. "I was scared," she admitted. "Scared I was just the next chapter in someone else's story." "You're not the next chapter," I whispered. "You're the story I should have been telling all along." We stood there in the dark, breathing each other in like oxygen. The tension didn't disappear, but it shifted. It became something tender, forgivable. She led me to the couch, curling up next to me with her head on my chest. My fingers found hers, and we sat like that, wrapped in something warm and fragile. Later, under her covers, we didn't rush to tear each other apart. We moved slowly, like we were rewriting the language between us. Every kiss was softer, every touch more deliberate. We weren't just crossing lines anymore, we were drawing new ones. Together. Afterward, her head tucked under my chin, she whispered, "You really blocked her?" "Yes." "Good," she said, sleep laced in her voice. "Now I don't have to." I smiled. Because for the first time in a long time, I felt certain. Not about the future, not about how the world would see us, but about her, and about me, and about us. The first time I saw Chloe again after everything, it wasn't dramatic. No shouting, no confrontations. Just a glance, half a second long, across a backyard filled with folding chairs, drink tables, and the buzz of soft music and family chatter. Tessa's aunt was turning 60. Her whole extended family was there, including Chloe. I hadn't expected her, and maybe she hadn't expected me either. But there we were, standing on opposite ends of the patio, pretending we hadn't shared a life, pretending we didn't know the weight of the silence between us. She was wearing a navy sundress, and that same guarded look she always put on when she felt like she was losing control. Her mouth twitched upward in the faintest mockery of a smile, then dropped again when she saw Tessa walk up behind me and slide her hand into mine. Tessa kissed my cheek, nothing performative, just a casual, familiar gesture, and smiled up at me like we were the only two people there. And in that moment, I realized something. Chloe wasn't angry anymore. She was alone. Not single. Not dateless. Alone. And not because no one wanted her. Chloe had always had a way of drawing people in. But she looked unmoored. Uncentered. And for the first time, I didn't feel resentment toward her. I felt nothing at all. Later, while Tessa chatted with her cousins by the drinks table, I wandered near the garden. Chloe was there, pretending to scroll through her phone. She looked up when I stopped a few feet away. "Didn't expect to see you here," she said flatly. "Family event," I said. "And I'm family now, apparently." She gave a soft, humorless laugh. "Funny how fast things change." I nodded. "Yeah, they do." She paused. "You look good." "So do you." Another pause. A breath caught somewhere in the middle. She looked down, fiddled with the edge of her phone. Was I really that bad? I blinked. "What?" "When I ended things. Did I really hurt you that much?" I studied her, unsure if she actually wanted the answer. "You didn't just hurt me," I said, voice calm. "You humiliated me, made me question my worth. Not because you stopped loving me. People fall out of love, but because of the way you did it. Cold. Detached. Like I was just some placeholder you'd finally grown bored of." Her eyes closed for a second. I thought I was being honest. "You were," I said, brutally. "But you forgot that honesty doesn't excuse cruelty." She looked away. "But I'm grateful now," I added. That made her look back. "Grateful? Yeah. Because if you hadn't let me go like that, I never would have figured out who I actually am. What I actually need." She swallowed. "And you found that with her." I did. There was no bitterness in my voice. No need for it. She nodded, slowly. "I never thought it would be her." "Neither did I," I said. "But she saw me." "I did too," Chloe whispered. "No," I said gently. "You saw the version of me you wanted. Tessa saw the one I was." She didn't speak again, just nodded, turned, and walked away toward the crowd, phone clenched tight in her hand like it might hold the last thread of whatever story she was still trying to tell herself. And just like that, the last ember went out. A while later, Tessa found me sitting under a string of lights, sipping a beer and watching kids run through the grass with sparklers. She slid into the seat next to me, pulled her legs up into the chair, and leaned her head against my shoulder. You okay? She asked. I am, I said. You? I saw you talking to her. I looked over. Wasn't a fight. Just an ending. She smiled. Good. She took my hand, laced our fingers together. Because I liked this beginning. We sat like that for a while, just watching the party unfold. Her thumb brushed over the back of my hand in small, absent circles. People came and went, but she stayed right there beside me. And then, somewhere between small talk and soft laughter, I realized what Chloe had never understood. It wasn't that I wasn't it. I just wasn't it for her. But for Tessa, I was the whole damn sentence.